Imagine a bird that stands 4 feet tall. A bird with legs like a supermodel and eyelashes that would make anyone jealous. A bird that looks like it's wearing a business suit and walks straight out of a corporate office. Now imagine that same bird hunting the deadliest snakes on Earth by stomping them to death with kicks so powerful they deliver 5 times the bird's body weight in force. Kicks so fast they happen in 195 milliseconds, faster than you can blink. This bird exists. It stalks the African savanna right now, and it might be the most badass predator you've never heard of. This is the secretary bird, part fashion model, part serial killer, part dinosaur. And once you see it in action, you'll never forget it. Let's meet the assassin. Picture the African savanna at dawn. The grass is golden in the early light. Acacia trees dot the landscape. Somewhere in the distance, you hear lions calling, and then you see it. At first, you might think it's a person. The silhouette is too tall, too upright to be a bird, but as it gets closer, the shape resolves into something that doesn't quite make sense. It's a bird, definitely a bird, but it's walking like it owns the place. Long, slender legs that would look more at home on a runway than a savanna. Black and grey plumage that's sleek and professional looking. And on top of its head, a crown of black feathers that stick up like quill pens behind a Victorian clerk's ear. That's where the name comes from, by the way. Early European settlers thought those head feathers looked like the quill pens that secretaries used to tuck behind their ears. So they called it the secretary bird. The scientific name is even better, Sagittarius serpentarius. Sagittarius means archer, because when it flies, it looks like an arrow. And serpentarius means snake killer, because that's what this bird does. It kills snakes, the most dangerous snakes in Africa, and it does it with style. The secretary bird spots something in the grass. Its head tilts. Those long, bare legs start moving faster. It's not running exactly, more like speed walking, but those strides cover ground quickly. Then it stops, freezes. Its entire body goes still except for its head, which is locked onto something in the grass ahead. And then it strikes. The leg shoots out so fast you almost miss it. The foot comes down like a hammer. Wham! The impact echoes across the savanna. In the grass, a puff adder, one of Africa's deadliest snakes, has just been hit with a force equivalent to 5 times the secretary bird's body weight. That's like being hit by a sledgehammer traveling at high speed. The snake tries to coil, tries to strike back, but the secretary bird isn't done. It hops backward on one leg, a move that looks almost choreographed, and stomps again, and again, and again. Each stomp lands precisely on the snake's head or spine. Each one delivered in less than 200 milliseconds. The bird is basically a kung fu master with wings. Within seconds, the snake is dead. The secretary bird picks it up in its beak, shakes it a few times to make sure it's really dead, and swallows it whole, head first. Then it continues walking, scanning the grass for the next meal. Just another day at the office for the secretary bird. Quick thing, if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep making these videos about incredible animals. Every subscription matters. Seriously. Alright, back to the hunt. Let's break down what just happened, because the physics of that stomp is absolutely insane. Scientists have studied secretary bird strikes using high-speed cameras running at thousands of frames per second. What they found is remarkable. When a secretary bird stomps, its foot is traveling downward at about 3 meters per second. That might not sound incredibly fast, but remember, this is happening in less than 200 milliseconds. The acceleration is enormous. The force of impact ranges from 195 to 220 newtons. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to 5 times the bird's body weight. The average secretary bird weighs about 7 to 9 pounds, so it's hitting with the force of a 35 to 45 pound object dropped from height, and it's all concentrated into those toes. Secretary birds have thick, tough toes with short, blunt claws, perfect for delivering blunt force trauma. The kick is so powerful it can kill a snake instantly by crushing its skull or breaking its spine. Even if the first kick doesn't kill it, the rapid follow-up stomps will. And here's the really impressive part. The secretary bird can do this while standing on one leg and maintaining perfect balance. It can stomp repeatedly without falling over. It can even jump into the air and come down with both feet on particularly large snakes. It's like watching a martial artist who's spent decades perfecting a single devastating move. Except, this bird is born knowing how to do it. Secretary birds don't just kill snakes. Those snakes are their favorite prey. They'll eat almost anything they can stomp into submission. Lizards, stomp and eat. Rodents, stomp and eat. Large insects like locusts and beetles, stomp and eat. Ground-dwelling birds and their eggs? You guessed it. They've even been known to kill young gazelles, hares, and other small mammals. If it moves on the ground and is roughly snake-sized or smaller, the secretary bird will try to stomp it. There are documented cases of secretary birds killing young jackals and mongooses. They've been seen stomping tortoises to break their shells. They've killed monitor lizards that are almost as long as they are tall. Nothing that lives on the ground is safe from the secretary bird's stomping rage. But snakes are special. Secretary birds actively hunt snakes. They seem to prefer them over other prey, and they're really, really good at killing them. Puff adders, cobras, black mambas, some of the most dangerous snakes in Africa, are all on the menu. The venom doesn't matter because the secretary bird kills them too quickly for the snake to bite effectively. And on the rare occasions when a snake does manage to bite a secretary bird, the bird has thick scales on its legs that provide some protection. The legs are also long enough that even if a snake strikes, it often can't reach anything vital. It's like the secretary bird was designed specifically to kill snakes, which, evolutionarily speaking, it kind of was. Let's talk about what secretary birds look like up close, because they're honestly one of the most striking birds you'll ever see. They stand about 4 feet tall, taller when they stretch their neck up. Those legs make up a huge portion of their height. Long, powerful, covered in tough scales that look almost reptilian. The body is covered in blue-gray and black feathers. The wings are black-tipped. The tail feathers are long, almost as long as the body, and the 2 central tail feathers extend even further, like streamers. The face is distinctive. Bare orange-red skin around the eyes and on the face. It looks like they're wearing dramatic makeup. Long eyelashes, actually modified feathers, that frame the eyes beautifully. And then there's that crest, those black feathers that stick up from the back of the head like quill pens. When the bird is relaxed, they lie flat. When it's excited or alarmed, they stand straight up, making the bird look even more dramatic. Put it all together, and you have a bird that looks like a high-fashion model who moonlights as an assassin, or maybe a corporate executive who's secretly a kung fu master. The appearance is so distinctive that once you've seen a secretary bird, you'll never mistake it for anything else. Secretary birds are found across sub-Saharan Africa, from Senegal in the west to Somalia in the east, and down to South Africa. They prefer open grasslands and savannas, places where they can see clearly and have room to walk, because that's what secretary birds do. They walk a lot. These birds can cover 20 miles in a single day, just walking through the grass looking for food. They're tireless walkers, moving at a steady pace for hours, scanning constantly for prey. They're one of the few birds of prey that hunt primarily on foot. Most raptors, eagles, hawks, falcons, hunt from the air or from perches. They soar, they dive, they grab prey with their talons while flying. Secretary birds can fly. They're actually quite good at it, but they choose to walk. They spend most of their time on the ground, stalking through the grass like avian velociraptors. When they do fly, it's usually to get to their nest or to escape danger. They have to run for a bit to get airborne. Those long legs make takeoff awkward, but once they're up, they're graceful. They soar on thermals, wings spread wide, looking surprisingly elegant. But flying is the exception. Walking is what they do. Walking and stomping. Secretary birds are not solitary. They mate for life and hunt in pairs. When you see one secretary bird, there's usually another one nearby. They maintain territories together, hunt together, and raise their young together. The pair bond is strong. They perform elaborate courtship displays, chasing each other across the savanna, spreading their wings, calling out. The male will sometimes bring food to the female as a gift. Once paired, they stay together for life. If one dies, the other may take a new mate, but while both are alive, they're committed. They build enormous nests, platform nests made of sticks and grass, usually placed in the flat top of an acacia tree. The nests can be 8 feet across and several feet deep. They're reused year after year, getting bigger each breeding season as more material is added. The female lays 2 to 3 eggs. Both parents take turns incubating them, which takes about 45 days. When the chicks hatch, both parents feed them, bringing back snakes and other prey to the nest. Young secretary birds stay in the nest for about 80 to 100 days, a long time for a bird. They're learning, growing, developing those powerful leg muscles they'll need for stomping. Even after they leave the nest, the parents continue to care for them for several more weeks, teaching them to hunt. Young secretary birds have to learn the stomping technique. It's instinctive to some degree, but refining it takes practice. You can sometimes see young secretary birds practicing their stomps on nothing or on sticks and leaves, perfecting the motion before they try it on actual prey. Let's talk about those legs in more detail, because they're really the key to everything the secretary bird does. The legs are incredibly long relative to the bird's body. They account for much of its height and give it an advantage when hunting in tall grass. It can see over the vegetation and spot prey that other ground hunters would miss. The bones are thick and strong. The muscles are powerful. This isn't decorative. These are functional weapons. The feet are interesting too. Secretary birds have the typical bird foot structure, 4 toes, 3 pointing forward and 1 back. But their toes are short and thick compared to other raptors. They're not designed for grasping like an eagle's talons. They're designed for stomping. The toes are covered in thick scales that protect them from snake bites and the impact of repeated stomping. The claws are short and blunt, more like hooves than talons. When a secretary bird stomps, it doesn't try to pierce or grab. It just hits. Blunt force, trauma. Simple, effective, devastating. Scientists have compared the secretary bird's hunting technique to that of a heron, which also hunts by striking with its beak. But while a heron's strike is precise and delicate, spearing a fish, the secretary bird's stomp is brutal and overwhelming. It's not finesse, it's power. Here's something interesting. Secretary birds are practically immune to snake venom, but not because of any special biological adaptation. They just kill the snakes too fast for the venom to matter. Most animals that regularly eat venomous snakes have some kind of venom resistance. Honey badgers, as we've discussed, have natural antivenoms in their blood. Some snake-eating snakes are immune to the venom of their prey. Secretary birds don't have this. If a snake manages to inject venom into a vital area, the bird could die. But that almost never happens, because the secretary bird's entire hunting strategy is based on speed and power. The snake doesn't get a chance to bite before its skull is crushed. It's not about being tough enough to survive venom. It's about being fast and powerful enough that venom is irrelevant. Sometimes the best defense is overwhelming offense. If you're loving this story, subscribe right now. More incredible animals coming, and I need to know you're with me. Hit that button. Secretary birds have a long and interesting history with humans, and unlike many predators, it's mostly been a positive relationship. Let's talk about secretary birds and people. In many African cultures, secretary birds are seen as good omens. They're respected, even revered. Part of this is practical. Secretary birds kill snakes, and snakes are dangerous. A bird that patrols your fields and kills the cobras and puff adders lurking in the grass, that's a valuable neighbor to have. But there's more to it than just pest control. Secretary birds have a dignity about them. The way they walk, upright, deliberate, almost regal. The way they carry themselves. There's something almost human in their bearing. Some cultures associate them with warriors. The secretary bird doesn't flee from danger. It doesn't avoid fights. It seeks out some of the most dangerous creatures on Earth and kills them with precision and power. That's warrior energy. In South Africa, the secretary bird appears on the country's coat of arms. It's one of the national symbols representing protection and vigilance. The imagery shows the bird with wings spread, protecting a shield, a guardian. That's not accidental. The secretary bird was chosen specifically because of what it represents, a protector that confronts danger directly rather than fleeing from it. The scientific study of secretary birds goes back centuries, though early naturalists struggled to classify them. They're clearly birds of prey. They hunt and eat meat. But they don't hunt like other raptors. They're on the ground, walking, using their feet as weapons rather than their talons for grasping. For a long time, secretary birds were classified with hawks and eagles, then with cranes, then back with raptors. The taxonomy kept shifting because they didn't fit neatly into any category. Modern genetic analysis has settled the question: secretary birds are raptors, but they're in their own family, Sagittariidae. They're the only living species in their entire family. That means their closest living relatives are other birds of prey like eagles and hawks, but the secretary bird lineage split off from them millions of years ago and went its own direction. They're evolutionary unique, a one-of-a-kind experiment in what a bird of prey can be. Fossil evidence suggests that secretary birds or their close relatives have been around for at least 20 million years. Ancient relatives of secretary birds have been found in Europe and Asia, though today they're found only in Africa. These ancient birds were similar to modern secretary birds, tall terrestrial hunters that walked rather than flew for most of their hunting. Why did they disappear from Europe and Asia but survive in Africa? Climate change is likely part of the answer. As forests expanded in Europe, the open grasslands that secretary birds need shrank. They couldn't adapt quickly enough. But in Africa, the savannas remained, and the secretary birds thrived. They've been walking through African grasslands for millions of years, perfecting their snake-stomping technique, outlasting countless other species that came and went. Now, the question you might be wondering, can you eat secretary bird? Technically, yes. Historically, some people have hunted them for food. But should you? No. And here's why. First, it's illegal in most places. Secretary birds are protected under various wildlife laws throughout their range. Hunting them carries penalties. Second, they're not particularly good eating. Most accounts describe the meat as tough and gamey. They're muscular birds that walk for hours every day, not exactly tender. Third, and most importantly, they're valuable alive. A secretary bird in your area means fewer dangerous snakes. Farmers and ranchers have learned this. In many regions, killing a secretary bird is seen as foolish because you're eliminating a free pest control service. Plus, secretary birds are slow breeders. They only raise 2 to 3 chicks per year, and not all of those survive to adulthood. Heavy hunting pressure could quickly deplete local populations. So, while technically edible, secretary birds are much more valuable as living, snake-killing neighbors than as a one-time meal. Real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. These videos take a lot of work, and your subscription keeps me motivated. Hit that button. Secretary birds face some conservation challenges, though they're not as critically endangered as some species. Their biggest threat is habitat loss. As grasslands are converted to agriculture, as cities expand, as land is developed, secretary birds lose the open spaces they need. They're also vulnerable to poisoning. When farmers put out poison for rodents or other pests, secretary birds sometimes eat the poisoned animals and die. It's not intentional. Farmers aren't targeting secretary birds, but it happens. Vehicle strikes are another problem. Secretary birds often hunt along roadsides where the grass is shorter and visibility is better, but this puts them at risk from cars and trucks. Climate change is also a concern. Shifts in rainfall patterns affect prey populations. Longer droughts mean fewer snakes and rodents. Secretary birds can travel far to find food, but there are limits. That said, secretary birds are currently listed as vulnerable rather than endangered or critically endangered. Their populations are declining in some areas but stable in others, particularly in protected areas like national parks. Conservation efforts focus on protecting grassland habitats, reducing poisoning incidents, and educating people about the value of secretary birds. In some areas, there are even programs to relocate secretary birds to regions where they've disappeared, helping to restore populations. Secretary birds have some behaviors that are just fascinating and weird. For instance, they sunbathe. On cool mornings, you'll sometimes see a secretary bird standing in the early sun with its wings spread wide, soaking up warmth. They can stand like this for 10 to 15 minutes, completely still, looking like they're doing some kind of ritual. They're actually thermoregulating, warming up their muscles before the day's hunt. Cold muscles don't stomp as effectively, so they warm up first. They also have a distinctive call that sounds nothing like you'd expect. It's not a screech or a cry. It's more like a croak or a rattle. Some people describe it as sounding like a sick person trying to clear their throat. During courtship, they make this call while dancing, running at each other with wings spread, leaping into the air, showing off. It's dramatic and bizarre, and surprisingly beautiful. Secretary birds also engage in what's called play behavior, though scientists debate whether it's actually play or just practice hunting. Young secretary birds, and sometimes adults, have been observed stomping sticks, rocks, leaves, clumps of grass, things that obviously aren't prey. They'll stomp them repeatedly, flip them around, stomp them again. It looks exactly like a cat playing with a toy. Whether it's fun for the bird or just maintaining skills, we don't really know, but it's entertaining to watch. There's a famous secretary bird named Big Bird, yes, really, who lived at a wildlife park in South Africa and became something of a celebrity. Big Bird was hand-raised after being found injured as a chick. He couldn't be released back to the wild because he'd been imprinted on humans and wouldn't survive. So he became an ambassador for his species. He participated in educational programs, allowing people to see a secretary bird up close and learn about them. Big Bird was gentle with his handlers, but would occasionally demonstrate his stomping technique on specially designed targets. Watching him stomp in slow motion, seeing the power and precision, converted many people into secretary bird fans. He lived for over 20 years at the park before passing away from old age. During that time, he helped raise awareness and funding for secretary bird conservation. Individual animals like Big Bird matter because they create emotional connections. People who meet them, who see them in person, become invested in protecting the species. In captivity, secretary birds are challenging to keep. They need enormous enclosures because they're used to walking miles every day. A small cage would be cruel. They need appropriate food, live prey or carefully prepared diets that include whole animals. You can't just feed them processed meat. They need the bones, feathers, scales, all of it. They're also smart and can get bored. Bored secretary birds become destructive or depressed. They need enrichment, things to investigate, challenges to solve, spaces to explore. Despite these challenges, some zoos successfully keep and breed secretary birds. These programs serve as genetic reservoirs and educational tools. Seeing a secretary bird in person is impressive. Photos and videos don't quite capture the size, the presence, the way they move. Standing next to one, you understand why they command respect. Secretary birds interact with other animals in interesting ways. They're not particularly afraid of large predators. There are videos of secretary birds walking right past lions, barely giving them a glance. The lions, in turn, generally ignore the secretary birds. Why? Probably because there's an unspoken understanding. Attacking a secretary bird would be more trouble than it's worth. Those kicks are powerful enough to injure a lion, especially if they land on the face or nose. And there's not much meat on a secretary bird anyway. It's a mutual respect. The secretary bird doesn't challenge the lions, and the lions don't bother the secretary bird. With smaller predators like jackals or mongooses, secretary birds are more aggressive. They'll chase them off, sometimes even attacking if the predator gets too close to their nest. There are documented cases of secretary birds killing jackals that ventured too near. Again, the stomp technique works on anything that's on the ground. They also have interesting interactions with vultures and other scavengers. Secretary birds sometimes feed on carrion they find, and when they do, they'll defend it aggressively from vultures trying to steal the food. A secretary bird versus a vulture is a mismatch. The vulture has no chance. Those wings might be big, but they can't stop a stomp. One of the most interesting things about secretary birds is their relationship with fire. In many grassland ecosystems, Fire is natural and necessary. Lightning strikes cause fires that burn through dry grass, clearing old growth and allowing new plants to emerge. Secretary birds have learned to use these fires to their advantage. When a grassland fire is burning, secretary birds will walk along the edge of the flames. Why? Because the fire drives out all the small animals, snakes, rodents, lizards, insects, that were hiding in the grass. They flee the flames and run right into the waiting secretary birds. It's basically a buffet. The secretary birds follow the fire line, stomping any prey that emerges. They're not afraid of the flames. They stay just outside the danger zone, walking calmly while everything else panics. This behavior shows sophisticated understanding of their environment. They recognize fire as an opportunity, not just a threat. They've learned to exploit it for food. Some researchers believe secretary birds may have been doing this for millions of years, developing this behavior long before humans were around. It's yet another example of how adaptable and intelligent these birds are. If you're still watching and not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Subscribe. It genuinely helps me keep making these. Thanks. So what makes the secretary bird so special? Why does this bird matter? Let me tell you. First, there's the evolutionary uniqueness. Secretary birds are the only living members of their entire family. That means if they go extinct, we don't just lose a species, we lose an entire branch of the evolutionary tree, an entire way of being a bird of prey. Most raptors hunt from the air. They soar, they dive, they strike from above. That's the standard raptor playbook. The secretary bird threw out that playbook and wrote its own. It hunts on foot. It uses its legs as weapons. It's developed a completely different hunting strategy that works brilliantly in its environment. If we lose secretary birds, we lose that unique evolutionary solution. We lose millions of years of adaptation to a specific niche. We lose proof that there's more than one way to be a successful predator. That's not just sad, it's a loss to the diversity of life on Earth. Second, there's the ecological role. Secretary birds are apex predators of the ground. They control snake and rodent populations in ways that other animals can't. Eagles might catch a snake occasionally, but they're hunting from above and they don't specialize in it. Ground predators like mongooses hunt snakes too, but they're much smaller and avoid the really dangerous ones. Secretary birds actively seek out the most dangerous snakes and kill them routinely. They're one of the few predators that can safely and efficiently control populations of cobras, puff adders, and other venomous species. Remove secretary birds from an ecosystem, and snake populations would explode. That affects everything. More snakes means more predation on other small animals, more snake bites affecting livestock and people, more ecological pressure on species that can't defend against venom. The secretary bird is what ecologists call a keystone species. Its impact on the ecosystem is disproportionately large compared to its numbers. Take it away, and the whole system starts to shift in unpredictable ways. But beyond the science and the ecology, there's something else. The secretary bird represents a kind of elegance in violence, a beauty in power. Most predators are brutal. Lions tear prey apart. Crocodiles drown and crush. Hyenas eat things alive. There's nothing elegant about it. It's just raw survival. But watch a secretary bird hunt. The way it walks, calm, measured, almost meditative. The way it spots prey and freezes, calculating. The way it strikes, one precise, devastating blow delivered with perfect form. It's violent, yes, but there's an art to it, a precision, a control. The secretary bird doesn't waste energy. It doesn't panic. It doesn't overkill. It assesses the situation, executes the technique perfectly, and moves on. There's something almost zen about it, like watching a martial artist who's mastered their discipline so completely that violence becomes a kind of dance. It reminds us that power and grace aren't opposites, that you can be deadly and beautiful at the same time. That efficiency can be elegant. Secretary birds also teach us about specialization versus generalization. Most animals are generalists to some degree. They can eat a variety of foods, live in different habitats, adapt to changing conditions. That flexibility helps them survive when environments change. But the secretary bird is a specialist. It's evolved specifically to hunt on foot in open grasslands. It's incredibly good at what it does, the best in the world, in fact. But that specialization makes it vulnerable. If grasslands disappear, secretary birds can't just switch to hunting in forests or wetlands. They need the open spaces. This is a lesson that applies beyond ecology. Specialization has costs and benefits. Being the absolute best at one thing can be powerful, but it also creates dependencies. The secretary bird's success and vulnerability both come from the same source: its perfect adaptation to a specific niche. It's a reminder that there's no single best strategy. Specialists and generalists both have roles to play. There's also something to be said about the secretary bird's reputation and reality. When most people see a secretary bird for the first time, they think it looks elegant, beautiful, almost delicate. Those long legs, that graceful walk, those eyelashes. Then they see it hunt. They see it brutally stomp a cobra to death. They see the power and violence hidden inside that elegant package. It's a reminder not to judge things by appearance. The most beautiful things can be deadly. The most graceful can be brutal. Elegance doesn't mean weakness. The secretary bird doesn't advertise its danger. It doesn't puff up or display aggressive colors. It just walks calmly through the grass, looking like it's on its way to a business meeting. And then it kills one of nature's most feared predators without breaking stride. There's a confidence in that, a quiet certainty. The secretary bird doesn't need to look threatening because it knows what it's capable of. That's a kind of strength worth respecting. Before we wrap up, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. It really encourages me to keep making these videos. Every subscriber matters. Hit that button. Let's talk about what we can do to help secretary birds. Unlike pangolins, secretary birds aren't facing an immediate extinction crisis, but their populations are declining, and without intervention, that decline could accelerate. The most important thing is habitat protection. Secretary birds need grasslands, large, open areas where they can walk and hunt. Protecting these ecosystems protects secretary birds and countless other species. Support organizations working on grassland conservation in Africa. These might not be specifically focused on secretary birds, but protecting the habitat protects the species. If you visit Africa and go on safari, tell guides you're interested in seeing secretary birds. Tourism demand drives conservation. When guides know people want to see secretary birds, they learn where to find them, which increases awareness and protection. Support legislation and policies that fight climate change. Changing rainfall patterns and increasing droughts threaten grassland ecosystems and the animals that depend on them. And as always, spread awareness. Share this video. Tell people about secretary birds. The more people know about them, the more people care, and the more pressure there is to protect them. There's also value in supporting zoos and wildlife parks that keep secretary birds. These institutions serve multiple purposes. They educate the public, they maintain genetic diversity, and they fund conservation work in the wild. A good zoo with a healthy secretary bird population is doing important work. Visit them, support them, learn from them. And if you ever get the chance to see a secretary bird in the wild or in captivity, take it. Photos and videos don't do them justice. You need to see that walk, that strike, that presence in person to really understand. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. The secretary bird is proof that evolution can create solutions we'd never imagine. A bird that hunts on foot. A raptor that stomps instead of strikes. A predator that looks like a fashion model and fights like a kung fu master. It's proof that there's still wonder in the world, that there are still creatures out there doing things that seem impossible until you see them with your own eyes. It's proof that conservation works. Secretary birds still exist, still walk the savannas, still hunt snakes, because people decided their habitats were worth protecting. And it's proof that we need to keep paying attention. Because for every famous animal that everyone knows about, lions, elephants, rhinos, there are dozens of species like the secretary bird. Important, unique, fascinating, but not yet on everyone's radar. The secretary bird is still here, still stalking through African grasslands, still stomping cobras, still being absolutely, impossibly cool. But that's only guaranteed to continue if we make sure it does. If we protect habitats, if we reduce threats, if we keep caring. Somewhere in Africa right now, the sun is rising over the savanna. The grass is golden in the early light, and a secretary bird is beginning its daily patrol. It walks with that distinctive gait, measured, confident, purposeful, head up, crown feathers catching the light. It's looking for breakfast, and when it finds a puff adder coiled in the grass, it will deliver that perfect kick. That 195 millisecond stomp that carries 5 times its body weight in force. The snake won't know what hit it, and the secretary bird will continue walking, elegant and deadly. A perfect fusion of beauty and power that's been perfected over millions of years. Let's make sure that sight continues for millions more. If this story moved you, if the secretary bird is now one of your favorite animals, subscribe. I'm serious. It really encourages me. Every time that subscriber count goes up, it tells me these videos matter, that people care about these incredible creatures. And that motivates me to keep researching, keep filming, keep telling these stories. So hit that subscribe button for the secretary birds, for the animals we haven't covered yet, for more stories that need to be told. Drop a comment and let me know, what animal should we explore next? I read every single one. Thanks for watching all 3 parts. Thanks for sticking with the story. Thanks for caring about a bird that most people have never heard of. And honestly, thanks for being here. These videos take a lot of work, but knowing people are watching, learning, and caring makes it all worth it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, keep paying attention to the wild things sharing this planet with us. The secretary bird, part model, part assassin, all incredible.